All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. You are tuning in to our Healthy Relationships Initiative holiday program on gift giving and receiving. So thank you to those who have joined us live, either through Zoom or on Facebook. We're so excited to be with you today and to introduce our guest speakers. But first, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Camila Dos Santos, and I'm the program coordinator for the Healthy Relationships Initiative. And if this is your first time connecting with an HRI program, I'd like to spend some time and just tell you a little bit about what we do. And so our mission is to promote happy, healthy, and safe relationships of all kinds. And we do that by coordinating and hosting programs such as these. And in the pandemic, we've certainly moved to a more virtual setting, but we also did face-to-face programming prior as well. So we encourage you to connect with us on our website at healthyrelationshipsinitiative.org or through our Facebook or Instagram at Healthy Relationships Initiative. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce the HRI director, Dr. Christine Murray, and she's going to tell us a little bit about our speakers today. And here we go, Dr. Murray.
All right, thank you, Camilla. My name is Christine Murray. I'm the director of the UNC Greensboro Center for Youth, Family, and Community Partnerships, where I also oversee the Healthy Relationships Initiative and get to work with Camilla through that initiative. I previously worked at UNCG as a counseling professor for 14 years before I started in this role in the center about a year and a half ago. And we're really excited to be here with you for today's program and just think that there's a lot of relationship implications around gift giving. And so that's why we're thrilled to have our guest speakers with us today. And so I'm going to take a moment to introduce Julie and Brooks Copeland, who are our featured experts for today's program. And Julie and Brooks are the founders of the National League of Junior Cotillions Northern Guilford chapter, and based here in North Carolina in 2007. And since that time, they've taught thousands of students etiquette and dance as co-directors, which I will include. My two children are part of that. They're two of those thousands. So I know of their expertise around all things etiquette related. And so really excited to talk with them today. But the Copelands host a myriad of programs annually for students in grades K through 12, and also offer private corporate programming for adults. Julie also is the Vice President of Talent at HRD Strategies Incorporated and serves as an executive coach with UNC Chapel Hill's Keenan Flagler Business School. And Julie's a graduate of Wofford College, and Brooks is a graduate of the Citadel. And I'll also briefly tell you a little bit more about Brooks too. He works at Volvo in the area of supply chain. And the Copelands are very civically involved locally here in Greensboro and Guilford County. And currently they're serving together as co-presidents of the Greensboro History Museum's Belle Meade Society. So welcome, Julie and Brooks. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us. Our pleasure.
Thank you.
So we're going to just jump right in with some questions, kind of starting with some questions related to some challenges that people might face related to gift giving. So first of all, we're going to talk about financial hardships. And one of the reasons why we were so convinced that we needed to do a program on this topic today and to kind of refer to throughout the holiday season is we know that the pandemic has really impacted a lot of people and families financially. So with a lot of people facing these added financial stressors right now, this idea of gift giving could be even more stressful for people and for families. So what are some ways, Julie and Brooks, that you would recommend that people who are experiencing financial hardship right now can find ways to show people that they care without breaking the bank?
I think that's a great question. I think that this year requires us to think less about a materialistic focus and that of money and more about that of meaning and creating meaning and being intentional about meaning, and to perhaps think a little less about cost and more about consideration and care and creativity. This is the express time to dig deep and to be incredibly creative. I think this year also is a time and a season for us to really think about the gift of giving ourselves, giving the gift of you to be fully present. It's more about this year, I think more than ever, about our presence, as in presence, P-R-E-S-E-N-C-E versus presence of P-R-E-S-E-N-T-S. But I think there's a number of strategies that we could really employ, and it involves thinking perhaps a little differently and quite creatively. Maybe this is the year to draw names. Maybe this year we think about giving gifts in our family to children only, or to perhaps to the matriarch of the family or the patriarch of the family, if we have a bigger family. Maybe this year is the year to introduce a theme. Only gifts that are made locally or made in the USA, or blue-colored gifts, your choice. Maybe we use our own gifts and we give a signature gift. Maybe it's making something special. My best friend, childhood best friend, Laura in Greenville, South Carolina, she crochets. And so this year she's taking the time to make 2 baby blankets for the newest members of her family. And as such, she is being overwhelmed by, other requests to craft more. So I think that this is the time to also think, well, if maybe I'm not crafty, what else do I do? What talents do I have to offer? Well, maybe you're like Brooks. You could come up with a signature playlist for some relatives. That would be cool. I could use that as I'm working out, walking, driving to work, here and there. But it's the time to really just, I think, more than ever, to be innovative. Perhaps it's an IOU. Maybe there's the use of coupons. We've heard about that before. Maybe it's, hey, I will wash that car, or I will mow your grass. That could be handy. I could use that. We could use that, right? Maybe it's gathering those leaves that are in our yards right now. I also think about other tools that are at our disposal. Maybe it's perusing Pinterest for some low-cost ideas. My hairdresser suggested something really awesome. She barters for services, and so that might render a gift for you to give or to enjoy yourself. She barters with, I believe, a massage therapist in exchange for giving of her services as a hairstylist. So this might be the year to kind of think a little differently in that way. What do you do? What can you offer that you could also leverage? But thinking about finances being tight, this also might be the time to pool your money, pool together with other family members and decide on, maybe it's an experience to be enjoyed at a later date. Maybe it's that restaurant we've all been wanting to go to, or we want to send our, later on when timing is appropriate, some special members of our family too, or it's that family vacation that might be lower scale, but we want to have it. Maybe it's theater tickets that we want to pool our dollars towards. So that allows you, in that case, to pat yourself on the back now and have a gift. But it allows you to save along the way, perhaps, and then celebrate together at a later date when it's safer, or, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just a few of the things that, could pop to mind. But, I also think about Brooks gifting the gift of a membership to a nice local entity. $39 buys you a gift membership for the Greensboro History Museum, for example. And so it's really thinking about, with intention, how can we support local businesses and local nonprofits, and buy gift certificates and things of that nature. So just a few of my immediate thoughts. Anything else, Brooks?
No, I think that covers a lot of it. I mean, just, again, the creativity and thinking out of the box this year. I mean, really, spend time, thinking about the people that you want to give gifts for, and just really thinking about what they appreciate and how you can fulfill that. Like Julie said, it doesn't need to cost a lot of money. It can be just something that you create on your own.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are really a lot of great suggestions. And I think one of the things that gets really complicated for some of these is sometimes there are, and I guess I'm taking it already to a little bit of a relationship piece, but sometimes there are real expectations in families or workplaces or other relationships where it's like you have to give a certain type of gift or a certain dollar amount of gift, or you always do that. And so people are really uncomfortable with having some of those conversations. So maybe I'd love to hear your thoughts from a etiquette perspective of how to have those conversations. And then maybe Camilla and I can also share some thoughts from the relational aspect. If you just can't, like if you don't have the time or you just don't have the money, or there's just people, should you just not give the gift, or should you talk about it, let people know what's going on with you and your financial situation perhaps?
I think that in this year we've made history in a number of ways. So I think that we can continue making history by changing some of the expectations this quarter, and because I think things look so very different for all of us, and so how we celebrate, I think, is along the same lines this year, and so I think that it bids us well to think about having some transparency and some honest conversation and dialogue. Brooks?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key is being honest and open, and going to a conversation with positivity and not negativity. You know, when you have that positive conversation, it always works out better in the end when you go in with a great mindset. And yeah, some people might be disappointed or you know, whatever, but it's about you and what you feel comfortable with. And if this year's been a bad year and you just don't feel like you can do what you have been doing in the past, don't feel bad about it. You know, have that conversation and just be like, hey, it's 2020. I mean, it's just the next thing in 2020, and this is just the way it is.
That's right. And it's giving ourselves grace, and it's also just imparting grace to other people. And I think that if we approach it with honest dialogue about, you know, let's talk about how we're going to celebrate. I have a group of girlfriends, and we, you know, always generally tend to probably spend too much, honestly, on each other. And we just had, you know, conversation that this is not the year to do that. This is the year to really appreciate and really cherish the friendship that we have. And but it's going to look a lot differently this year. So I think that as long as we come from a well-intentioned place, I think people are open, because, you know, right now that we're you know, seeing a surge again of, unfortunately, toilet paper not being available. So life looks a lot, you know, just a lot different this year. Last year, this time we had the luxury of having that good supply chain, and we are assured by, you know, experts that that's going to remain, that we've learned some lessons earlier in this year. But I still think that it's our opportunity. It's our opportunity to shape it, and we shouldn't feel bad about it, having to do less. I think we can, in fact, do more with creativity this year, and that more shows up differently, not more money, but more meaning.
And just to add to those thoughts, you know, Christine, you mentioned about just, should we have these conversations, or do we not address these conversations, right? And I think in general, when we're unsure about the etiquette of anything, whether it's gift giving or whether, you know, we're making the right step or making the right decision, anytime that we can be transparent and have a conversation with the people that we love, we're putting ourselves in a situation to just minimize conflict and minimize confusion down the line. And so, you know, rather than have these conversations with others about, you know, why is that person not gifting, or why is that person not doing this for my kids this year when they've done this in the past. Putting it all out there in the open is just a really great way to have everybody understand it. And that doesn't mean that you have to provide too many details or too many justifications, right? It just means that maybe you share a little bit about why this year looks a little bit different for you, and kind of tie it all back into the craziness of everything we're facing, and then finding other opportunities to find meaning with what you can do, as Julie and Brooks mentioned. So I think in general, if you can have a transparent conversation, that's always better than leaving people confused or unsure, because then there could be some relationship implications that last long beyond the holidays.
I think those are great points. And I guess the only other piece that I would add to right now would just be, this can be a real opportunity to not just think about yourself, but also think about others in your life. Maybe you know enough about what somebody's been going through this past year, whether it's a job loss or a furlough or a reduced income, or lots of childcare costs, or, you know, any other number of possible things. And, you know, possibly just reach out to those people in your life if you know that they've had added struggles, and say, let's not exchange gifts this year. Kind of like you said with your friends, I imagine, Julie, if you take any group of people, there's going to be some people in that group who maybe financially were not as affected. And then there might be some others who, might have been seriously impacted. And we can all probably do a lot to remove some of that pressure for people this year and really think about, who might I reach out to proactively and not wait for the holidays to come and be wondering what people are going to do, but just to reach out and say, instead of gifts this year, let's just meet and go for a walk, or, let's plan on getting together as soon as we can to go out to eat or something like that. Or I'll cook you a meal as soon as it's safe to do that. The IOU piece that you said. The other thing too, that something you said earlier that I wanted to mention before we move on, I really like the idea of the pooling your resources too. And I think especially if you're in a group or that you're in a family where certain people may have more financial hardships this year than others, think about maybe everybody pooling and let everybody contribute. Somebody might contribute 50 cents or $1, and somebody might contribute a couple $100 or something. But think about doing a gift in that way too, that allows people to be part of that. That does require some pretty healthy relationships and trust to be able to have that. But if you do know enough, we've all been in this situation a long time. I think a lot of us know with our friends and family members, like who's kind of been struggling more and less than others. So being intentional and being practical about that's really helpful. So one other piece with this pandemic that is really, I think, complicates gift giving this year is related to the fact that, like you just mentioned, Julie, we're seeing rates of COVID are going higher. One indicator is the toilet paper shortage that seems to be coming back. So a lot of people, including myself, honestly, are kind of struggling a lot with, can I see my family? I'm used to seeing family around the holidays. I can't be with them in person. A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times the thrill of gift giving and receiving is just being with the other person and having that face-to-face in-person exchange. So if we cannot be with our family, our friends, our loved ones, coworkers, what can we do around gift giving to make our loved ones feel special, even if we can't be together in person?
I love this question because I think no matter who we are, this is really relevant to us in the here and the now. And I think it's around creating, again, meaning and I would say memories. So let's think about how can we create memories in a socially distant context. Perhaps this is the year that if you are going to, if you are going to give and you are a part, maybe you're going to open those gifts together via Zoom. Maybe you're not giving gifts, but you're still going to rally together and you're going to have a meaningful Zoom session or meaningful phone call, or even a snail mail card where you're going to create some meaning and reach back around drawing on some maybe 20 favorite great memories that you've made over the holidays together. And this year looks a little different, but that you celebrate all of that history. Maybe you write that in a card, or you talk about that on the phone call, or in a family Zoom. Maybe this is about sunsetting 2020 and looking ahead to 2021. So in those Zoom conversations or those socially distanced visits in the yard, or if you are on the phone, maybe you talk about 2021 and the 21 memories that lie ahead post-COVID that you are going to create and enjoy together. I think there's some real opportunity for us to also help in a socially distanced way to celebrate and to also help shape some legacy. Because we also think about just tradition and really those of us that are fortunate to have, more seasoned and elderly members of our family still with us. It's an opportunity this is the year to get those great family secret recipes. Let's download them in a recipe download with them on a Zoom or on a phone call. Let's take time to handwrite those down. We may not be able to be in the same room with those loved ones, but this, for instance, is an opportunity for them to tell us. Let's video that, or let's capture that, however we can in a socially distanced and appropriate way. And then if we do have to be apart and we want to gift give, I think this is an opportunity for us to get really creative in our deliveries, that either we drop off at their doorstep or that they receive via the postal delivery business of choice for those snail mail deliveries. Maybe this is the year where they receive something electronic that's of meaning, like an honorarium to or a donation to their favorite charity in their honor, or the favorite cause that they're so passionate about. Typically what I love about that is that the dollar amounts are not necessarily shared in the gift acknowledgments electronically and in hard copy. So I think that affords someone to know, hey, someone really knows that this cause is very important to me, and has given a gift in honor to further or advance this mission. So I think that's really an opportunity for us. It's also an opportunity for us to support local businesses and local nonprofits, maybe buying gift certificates to a favorite restaurant of our loved ones, even if they live in a different state. We've heard them talk about, or we visited them previously and they really love this restaurant. Perhaps we could get a delivery from that restaurant, or perhaps we could get a gift certificate. But I think that this is a year about really making memories and helping, shaping a legacy, and thinking about our family members that we're so treasured to have with us, and friends, whomever we're calling family, and really taking the time. Brooks, you had you have a good idea just around movies, because you suggested we might even do this with our loved ones.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, I mean, I know a lot of people have the Fire Stick or all the downloadable stuff on TV now. I mean, it could even be like you download your favorite Christmas movie together this year, and sit around and watch that together. Try to download it and say, hey, let's get together at 6 o'clock and we're going to watch, The Night Before Christmas or whatever it is, and just have that bonding time together that can be, because usually when you get together in the family and you're there at your grandmother's house or family member's house and there's a lot of people there, you gravitate toward those things anyway. You gravitate toward movies or being together in something that everybody can enjoy. So that might be a great way to do that.
Maybe you're going to watch together the, whatever parade, if we have the Macy's Thanksgiving parade this year, or a football game, right? Together to kind of still have that banner back and forth, but it looks a little differently. We're all, we're safe this year, but we're still very blessed. If you're from a family of readers, what about a family book club? I don't know. Maybe that's something that we can introduce and gift, and then, talk about a little later. Just a few of just our thoughts.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. And as you both were talking, I started to think about this idea that we can do all of these things outside of just the actual holiday too. So we can really spread this cheer and have these meaningful moments, starting now. And there's nothing really stopping us from picking up the phone and kind of reaching out. And, one of the things that we started doing here, for example, is anytime we go somewhere new, even if it's just, a state park or something, we'll pick up a postcard and we'll send it to somebody who we thought of that day. And, it's not sort of under this holiday theme, but it's just another way to connect and make people feel heard. And despite the fact that we're in different places, we can still connect and have meaningful moments that way. So I think it's important for people to know that, we don't have to just give gifts on the holidays. We can certainly spread the cheer throughout all of the weeks to come. And maybe by doing that in small intentional ways, that can even be more powerful than getting like a big box on your doorstep on Christmas, for example.
Yeah, Camilla, I love that. And to that point, I also think about just this time of year with Thanksgiving approaching, but again, doesn't have to be Thanksgiving, doesn't have to be the holidays. Of just really thinking about, as I think about legacy and the impact that people have had in our lives, I like to take this time to, at least as I'm, to write or to reach out around Thanksgiving generally, just to show my gratitude for somebody that has really had an impact in my life. I'm actually reaching out to, we've just celebrated 16 years of marriage this past weekend, and I'm reaching out to the trumpeter and his wife that was at my wedding, because they will never know this, but they gifted us with a wonderful video that a wedding video that captured our whole wedding weekend, that if we did not have that legacy, I wouldn't be able to see now my parents that are now deceased. So it's been a real gift. It's a gift that keeps on giving, that we celebrate our love and our marriage, but to reach back to tell them how much that gesture really meant. They thought they were just doing something for fun, and I'm sure they did have fun with it, obviously, but I can't tell you how much I'm just so grateful for that. So, maybe it's reaching back to a past teacher or school administrator, and really a mentor that's really touched your life, and giving them the gift of knowing, gift giving is all about showing, appreciation in a lot of regard, and acknowledging. And I think one of the greatest gifts is a thank you, if that could be by phone, by Zoom, by card.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to share real quick. We had a great comment in the chat room that came in from Alex, who said that Alex is doing a lot of high resolution digital art to send over email, and includes a gift card so that the person can print that. And I just thought that was such a creative idea, because it's building on that person's unique talents. And doesn't cost a lot of money, works great in the virtual world. So thanks to Alex for sharing that. But I think it's another really great example of just using creativity and something that's very personal and meaningful to you.
Love that.
Absolutely. And this seems like a really good segue into some of the nitty gritty of sort of the etiquette of gift giving, because we've had such great ideas around just the importance of meaning and the importance of really thinking intentionally. But for a lot of people, they do have some really straightforward questions around just what's okay and what's not okay, especially now as we all sort of approach a pandemic holiday season that just feels a little upside down for many of us. And so as people start to consider, who do we give a gift to, right? So who actually makes that final list of gift giving? In instances where there's, for example, a lot of children in a family, maybe there's a lot of young children. Is it ever okay to gift some of the kids or not all of the kids? Or what are some things that families can do to kind of, mitigate the financial concerns, but also make sure that every child is highlighted during the holidays?
Well, I think, there's a lot of ways to look at this. And one is, I feel at least if children are involved, you want to at least try to give them something. Now, again, this goes back to budgeting and how you budget this holiday season. And again, it doesn't have to be anything flashy. It doesn't have to be anything big, but I feel like if you give one, you have to give all. That's how we always grew up in my family. And that might be an old way to think about it, but also, what constitute a child in the family? Some people, is it a 1-year-old? Is it somebody that's 23 that is still a kid in the family, but now they're in college or out of college? So I think at that point in time, I think that's where you can kind of start saying, okay, maybe not this year. For me, and Julie and I were talking about this a lot, and 18 and younger, I would say yes. I would try to get all those. Unless there's 100 of them in your family, I would say, yeah, if they're college age or older, but they're still considered kids in the family, then maybe not this year. But for me, the younger kids, yeah, I certainly would want to see those being taken care of.
But maybe if there's, again, what we're getting to, if we have a larger family, if we're going to see them, and we've worked out some socially distanced appropriate way within the family, or they're already in our family, I think that if we're going to see them and they're going to be in our presence and they are under the age of 18, I would recognize acknowledging, I would recommend acknowledging them in some creative fashion. It doesn't necessarily have to be high dollar to have high impact. But or maybe it could be centered around, this year we're going to have an activity that everyone is going to participate in, and that's our gift this year to you. Maybe it's a very special activity. I think it's all in how you market it too. Brooks was just sharing with me, what was one of your favorite things as a child, Brooks?
My parents, it's funny, being in my mid 40s now, my mom still brings this up every year, that I used to just love getting boxes. I didn't care about what was in the box. I was excited I got a box, as a young kid. So, it's all about perception. When you're dealing with younger kids, your perception of what they want and what they need is totally different from what theirs is, because they're just excited they got something. Coming from somebody who's an adult, is more like, what did I give them, and did I make it exciting enough for them? Whereas, you know, like I said, when I was a kid, I just like getting a box. It could have been a box. It didn't matter what was in it.
Well, those are great perspectives. And you brought up a couple of things that stood out to me, which is first, you know, it is important to probably recognize all of the children in the family in some way. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that, you know, you give them this huge gift. But what you brought up, Brooks, about our perspectives is really important here, because I think sometimes as adults, we get really caught up in what we're giving, right? Especially for children. And we want them to enjoy it and we want them to like it. But really, most children just like the concept of being recognized on a holiday and, you know, the whole thing of unwrapping your gift. And that's not to say it doesn't need to be meaningful, but it doesn't necessarily need to break the bank. And just as you were talking, some ideas came to mind about, you know, if you're in big families, for instance, maybe I know one thing my family does, we've got a lot of children. And so we tend to gift the children and not the adults. So the children will get gifts and maybe their parents won't. And that's sort of just an understanding in our family that we kind of just say, you know, and it's known and it's transparent, so there aren't any hard feelings. But, you know, other things that we've done, for example, in the pandemic this year, we will not be interacting with my niece, and she's in a different state. So we've donated a penguin to her, and basically what we did is we bought an online penguin somewhere in the world, and it's her penguin. And so throughout, it didn't cost us a lot of money, but what that's done for us is now we've had opportunities to meaningfully connect with our niece about what she's learned about penguins and what kinds of animals she loves. And so the gift itself was very small. It was a digital certificate, but what came from that really led to some meaningful moments where we got to bond with her. So really great perspectives about how it doesn't need to really break the bank. It doesn't need to be the perfect gift. It's more about just recognizing and allowing opportunities to connect.
And look at the return on investment that you've received from that. I mean, that was terribly creative.
We've had plenty of conversations about penguins, and it's one of those things that, you know, we could have given her a doll and maybe we wouldn't have had such fruitful conversations.
Right. Gift giving shouldn't be a chore. Really, it should be something that really excites us. And I know that sometimes we get in a just sort of a rut, and it's like, oh, and we just start to feel the stress, and, you know, of it. But my hope would be for our audience here and for all of us is that we would just carry into and remember that it's about making, you know, people feel special and remembered, and that doesn't have to have a heavy burden placed with it, that we should really just feel good and be at peace. And you know, we know from research that giving the gift is, you know, creates more joy, if not just as much joy as receiving it. And so I just would hope that for all of us this year, that we would look at things and be at peace and just really feel the spirit of the season and not be moved necessarily by dollar signs, but just by meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're kind of hearing that we probably want to gift the kids in the family, right? Especially if they're under 18. And I think that's something that we could probably sort of agree on in most instances. But what about people who are in newer relationships? So in newer romantic relationships, and, you know, we're getting around the holidays where those types of conversations can feel awkward in the beginning of a relationship. So how can people kind of navigate these conversations around gifting with a new romantic partner?
Well, again, it goes back to meaning and having an honest and open conversation. It's always, again, you always want to go into a conversation, like I said, more with positivity than anything else. Don't feel like it's a burden to talk about these things in a relationship, whether they're new or old. I mean, for me, it's all about what you want the relationship to be, and you want the relationship to always be open and honest and caring. And that's the type of conversation you need to have. And if the conversation is, you know, yeah, this could be our first Christmas together, and so you kind of want to make it special in a relationship, right? That first Christmas, there's always such a build up to, you know, what can I do to make this super special for this person who has come into my life and made me feel special. I want to make them feel special. So, you know, this year I think everybody understands this year is just a crazy year. And it's a different year than what we might see on a typical basis. So again, you know, it could be like, hey, you know, let's spend $20 on each other, or let's find something that we would love to do together. Maybe it's a canoeing trip next spring that you might want to do if you're two outdoor people, Again, maybe it's something like that that might not be the gift that you really might want in that first year, but it's something that you're coming up with together, and it's something that you can both agree on. And there's always time to make that up. It could be next summer. Maybe next summer is the time to really get that special gift because it's a birthday, or it's, maybe it's the 1-year anniversary next summer that you're in this relationship. So there's a lot of things that you can do now that really, like Julie was saying, and what we're all saying, is really create that memory and that meaning this year that might not be there in other years.
And what I really love about is the question is that I think this affords any couple in this situation a real opportunity, because this, I think, positions them for future dialogue around other topics and other success. So really, this is a great path. This is a great training ground, if you would. This is a great developmental exercise. And Thanksgiving's coming up. It's the perfect time, if you've not had the conversation, at the next opportunity when you're together, to go ahead and have an advance notice sort of conversation. I wouldn't wait until, mid-December to have this conversation when one of you may plan ahead, be a planner, and have already gotten a gift. And then you're caught off guard by the conversation, and tension is created, and frustration and dismay. I think the earlier that we do that to shape collaboratively our expectations together, the better of what this first Christmas might look like. But I would see it as glass half full. It's an opportunity. And if we succeed in this exercise, then my goodness, our future is bright.
I was just going to jump in too, because I think one of the other pieces that can be sometimes really interesting when it comes to couples is sometimes, and really any kind of relationship, but some people are just naturally really good at giving gifts, and other people feel so much pressure. And so what thoughts do you have around how couples can even navigate? And this is not just a new couple celebrating their first holidays together, but this could be a couple who's been together for 20 years, 30 years, even longer. How can couples or friends, family members sort of navigate that, like maybe feelings of guilt or inadequacy, like I'm just not as good of a gift giver as this other person, I don't have as much money to spend, I'm not as creative, all those different things that can come up?
Well, I think that it all starts from a place from grace and just peace, and acknowledging that you have other strengths and other gifts and talents to share. And all of us can't have strong suits in necessarily gift giving. We can all be gracious gift receivers, though. I would just encourage those people to really think about the person or people at hand that they're giving a gift. What are their passions? What are their interests? What have you picked up along the way in 2020 that they said, you know what, I cannot find my potato masher? Well, good news. The Dollar Tree has them. I know this firsthand. I misplaced mine, right? What is something quirky that you will have saved their life by purchasing? Maybe it's the garlic press. Maybe it's something totally outside of the kitchen maybe it's something you discovered when you were over there last that you just bet they have not repaired or gotten a replacement of. Give them the roll of duct tape. Make it a funny gift, right? But really think about that when we're challenged, or you have a person that seems to have it all, right? And what can I possibly do? I'm going to break the bank on giving them this, they love wine, but my goodness, I'm not a wine connoisseur. I'd love to get them a nice bottle of wine, but I can't break the bank and give them a $100 bottle of wine. I think that, what we do is, we get creative in the way of, well, their passion is vino. So maybe I'm giving them a book to read. Maybe I'm buying them a wine tasting at a local vineyard. And maybe I'm going to enjoy that experience and spend more time with them and learn more about them in this passion. I think that exercising just thoughtfulness, I think, is the real key this year. So it's looking for ways to really feed their passions, or to maybe it's an old hobby that maybe they've mentioned to you, hey, I'd really love to pick that golf back up. Maybe you give them just a sleeve of golf balls. Again, not something that has to be terribly expensive, but thoughtful.
Yeah, like Julie was saying, if you've been in a relationship, you've had conversations, and they might just be conversations that were thrown on the wall to see what stuck, or they were just in passing, and they didn't really mean anything that day. But if you remember that conversation, you remember what was said, then, I mean, there's always a gift in there somewhere. And it doesn't have to be a monetary. It could be a gift of time. It can be a gift of conversation. It can be a gift of really just, like Julie's saying, just the thought that goes into it. And trust me, I'm probably not the most creative person alive. And I mean, Julie, I'm sure will be glad to tell you that I probably am not the best gift giver in the world. But it's just, just if it comes from the heart, I mean, and that's really where, if they know that you put time, energy, and effort into the gift, no matter what the gift is, I'm sure it'll be very appreciated, no matter what it is.
And what pops to mind also is I think about those who have lost loved ones through the pandemic, but outside of the pandemic too, that are still grieving and mourning. There's a real opportunity to listen and to be there for that person, and that's a gift. But I also think about just really reaching out via text or reaching out via Zoom or a phone call to say, hey, I'm thinking about you, because I know that this is the first Christmas that that this is a difficult Christmas, that this is a challenging one, that you're used to being with that spouse or you're used to being with that best friend. But I have to share, and one of my very good friends just recently, I'd forgotten that I mentioned this to her. I said, you know what, at your wedding 15 years ago, I remember with my sister and my parents and Brooks, we just had a great random spontaneous snapshot by your photographer, and I loved that photo, and I can't find it. You know what? The greatest gift, she found the picture that she had, took a picture of it and sent it to me, right? So there's little things like that where we can be intentional and give gifts, and again, not be thoughtful, be really exercise care, and be terribly considerate, and not break the bank, but really etch a new place in somebody's heart.
Yeah, such great perspectives. And I always like to kind of take back these ideas and think about them more practically, things that people can really do after today. And, in hearing you both speak, I really heard some practical things that can be done. Like, for example, having transparent conversations where maybe you do decide on a cost, especially if you're in a new relationship and, you might not know what the expectations are. So maybe something as simple as saying, we're going to spend $30 and then sticking to that, right? And honoring that. But then, or maybe focusing more on experiences, whether you're a new couple or not, especially if one person doesn't feel as confident in their gift-giving abilities, right? Maybe then you can work together on an experience. But then I also heard you say that it's important to consider the intention of the gift giver, and it's important for the gift receiver to remember that as well. And so we might not always love every gift, and it might not always be super exciting, but what we do love is the person who gave it to us. And so that's important just to really remember as we receive them as well. So really great points. I appreciate you sharing those ideas. And now I think we can kind of dive into, we're getting to the end here of our time just about, but I did want to dive into some strategies for gifting. And then I do also want to talk a little bit about the relationship implications and hear from Christine on that as well. So in terms of just giving gifts and thinking about those strategies, we've heard you talk a lot about ways to keep it meaningful and how we can really be intentional in our gifts. But in terms of talking about couples or just relationships in general, how can people sort of handle that disappointment if they do get a gift that they don't like, right? I know in the best case scenario, we want to handle that graciously, but sometimes there's true disappointment, especially when there's been conversations around gifts and things like that. So how can people really handle that disappointment when you open up the box and it's not what you want, or it feels like it wasn't as meaningful of a gift that you're receiving? How can you deal with that?
Well, I think that it's important to remember your to keep your emotions in check, and to remember that this gift is it's a reflection and a symbol of love or honor or in celebration of you, no matter what the gift is, no matter if you have 10 of them already in the same pattern, but that there was really thought that poured into it, and that was love. So I think first and foremost that it's really taking that and showing gratitude, and you could then thereafter decide what you choose to do with it. Maybe it's something that at an appropriate time you could return if you have 10 of those, but so there's an opportunity for you to exchange. So the world's not ending, right? You've got 10 of those, now you've got the 11th. It's going to be okay. But I think first is just coming from a place of wow, they were really well intentioned. Thank you. We always we start in our custodian classes teaching our kindergartners that as soon as you you start to take the tissue out of the gift bag, first as you receive the gift, you say thank you. And I think sometimes it's reminding ourselves that as we receive, to say thank you, and then as we are unwrapping that bow or that package, just really thinking about again our gratitude, that word thank you. We tell them to really think about saying thank you and thinking thank you 3 times, and then when we see that, no matter what it is, hopefully it will excite us, but that we go ahead and say thank you +1 where appropriate. So thank you. It's not just thank you for this gift, but thank you. And I can't wait to use this, as I in my daily work life. I can't wait to wear these slippers on these on these cold nights to keep my feet nice and toasty. If you're not able to get to that place of thank you +1, just know that as you look at that and think about, okay, I've said thank you. What does that really mean? It means that I need to be gracious. I need to understand that they're coming from a loving place. Brooks?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, it might be disappointing in what you get, but again, you need to realize that it came from somebody, and honestly, it probably came from a very caring way from them. I mean, I think we talked about not everybody's the greatest gift giver in the world, and sometimes you just need to remember that. And hey, like Julie was saying, if you already have 5 or 6 of one thing and you get another thing, then there's always something else that you can do with it, or take it back, or I mean,
regift
it
with strategy. But Brooks, I really think, just to piggyback on what you were just saying, I think it's too important to remember that may be their best, their best of what they can offer you. And they're giving you a piece of their heart. And so for this year, it may have taken everything they could, and they may have sacrificed and made some sort of sacrifice to give you this. So I think this year, let's all just really, and there are some things that we don't know about, about our friends. We don't have the luxury of knowing everything about their financial situations and where they are emotionally. I like for us to think about even people that I'm passing on the street, just to remember, gosh, they may have just received some bad news, or they may be in a tough spot right now. And I think the holidays in general, outside of a pandemic, that's the case. And I think sometimes we're just, quick to rush by people and not really exercise intention. But I'd really love for us to come from a place of just for every moment to be fully present and to think about that. They're giving us their best.
And always, again, don't let your disappointment or things outside, because I mean, don't let something that may be you're having a bad day because of another reason, don't let that affect how you go into that gift exchange or go into that that moment and have that negative thought of something that happened 2 hours ago and let that negatively affect how you feel about the person or about the gift that you get.
I think those are all such good points around kind of the relational aspects of gift giving too. And I think that if one gift really throws off a relationship or feels like it, is a real blow to your ego or to your relationship, that probably is about more than the gift and might be about more than your underlying feelings of a relationship or maybe your mindset toward that relationship. And, one of the things that's so important in relationships is for people to keep a positive, not to accept disrespectful and harmful behavior, but to really try to see the best in their loved ones. And as you've said many times here, give a lot of grace and, look for the positives and strengths wherever we can. And, part of it might be then that sort of check back, like, do I have expectations that I have not expressed to this person? Or, have I let them know me enough about what I like and what I don't like? And maybe if this gift is like way off, maybe that's a sign that, that I don't know, that they don't know me as well as I thought that they knew me. But for really people, I just really appreciate what you just said about a gift. Your relationships are more important than a gift, regardless, and I think that you always want to work toward preserving and building healthy relationships. Now, I will say, I do think sometimes people fall into patterns or kind of traps when it comes to relationships. I think about like a couple who always gives each other the same thing every year for holidays, birthdays, and they both don't like it, but it's just such a pattern, so to use those as opportunities to grow and talk about it, and maybe talk about it not immediately. I think right after giving or receiving a gift can be a very sort of vulnerable time. Maybe waiting later and say, let's try something different for our gifts this year. Or this year, what I'd really love is, X, Y, and Z. And especially the more you know somebody, the more that you might even be willing to suggest. But yeah, certainly people can really, I think, sometimes put a lot of meaning into gifts, and really what's most important is the relationship there, and as you said, getting a gift that maybe you're not super thrilled about doesn't have to be the end of the world.
And Christine, I think that's a good point of mentioning something that you really want, because I think a lot of times people expect people just to understand what they need and what they want, and we're not mind readers. We can't always understand what somebody needs or wants at a particular point in time in life. And I think, don't be scared about saying, hey, I was looking at X, drop a hint here or there. You don't have to come right out and say, get me this year or else. It's, hey, I was looking at this magazine and I saw this, or I was walking by this in the store and I saw this. It doesn't have to be anything blatantly obvious, but sometimes, especially guys, we need hints sometimes. So, it's all right. We'll be glad to take them.
And to add to that, there's no shame in bringing back the Christmas list, right? So letting people know what we want. I know that last year, it was one of the first years where I was really transparent about the things that I wanted. It's not something I ever did before. I always felt a little weird and just kind of strange saying, here's one thing that I want. And I can tell you the feedback on my end is I loved all my gifts, but the feedback on my family's end was that you just made it a lot easier,
Right.
You take a lot of the stress away from others when you tell them what you want. And of course, we don't want to make any assumptions about what people will spend. And so if you just kind of keep it in an appropriate range or give people options, there's absolutely nothing wrong with telling people what you want and kind of taking the surprise out of the equation, especially in newer relationships where you might not know what the other person's hobbies are or what they would like to receive. So there's no shame in asking.
Let's see, we're down to our last few minutes here. So let's talk, before we wrap up, I do want to talk just a little bit more about receiving, because I think we've been talking a lot about giving, but let's spend a few more minutes before we go to some final thoughts around receiving gifts. And, what can you do to really, honestly, whether you are sort of blown away by the gift or just blown away by the intention behind it, how can you really express your gratitude? I think thank you notes have somewhat probably, maybe gone out of style a little bit. Are they still needed? Is an email or text okay? How can we really express appreciation when we receive a gift that we're excited about?
Well, I think that if you have the luxury of having a gift exchange where you're on Zoom or you're on the phone and opening up virtually while socially distanced or in the same room, we then are afforded the opportunity to thank them aloud, which is great. And I do encourage that thank you plus one technique, and particularly if you are excited about the gift. And that's just saying, not just thank you, but again, taking it one step further of how much this gift really means to you. And so again, how are you going to use it, or where do you see this fitting in, or how soon will you be able to enjoy the gift, et cetera, et cetera. I do think that there's still a place for those great snail mail thank you notes, particularly in instances where you feel that maybe you were kind of caught off guard by the gift and you weren't really able to adequately express your appreciation. I think that for you, sometimes it's closure and having peace of mind that you really want to make sure that they understand how much the gift meant to you. I think is important. If they're in your close circle of friends, certainly in our digitized, socially distanced world, I think that a text can be can definitely be well received, maybe along with a fun picture of you wearing the new sweater, or with your feet in front of the fire in those nice toasty slippers, etc. So you can get creative where you also see, and they, it brings a smile to their face of, it's not just thank you, hey, I really like the gift. It's, hey, look at me, like, look at this, you made this possible, kind of thing. And particularly if they, gift you, let's say, an experience, wouldn't it be fun to be standing outside or inside the Greensboro History Museum or wherever, or on the next family vacation, taking a shot and say, hey, you helped make this possible. Thank you. It's a gift that keeps on giving. So I think we can get creative creative in that way. So we can do snail mail. We can use, texting. We can get on the phone, call them, if we didn't have that luxury of talking aloud. What's other
Yeah, I
thoughts?
mean, and it's just it's simple follow up. I mean, if you got a gift that you can wear or something that you use, let them know via text that you're using or wearing it.
Yes.
I mean, it might
Yes.
not be the day that you get it. It could be a week later. It could be a month later. But that, I mean, even especially if it's a month later or 2 months later,
Mm-hmm.
that you're like, oh, hey, yeah, I remember, Sue gave me this garlic press, and I'm making something with garlic. Give them a text real quick and say, hey, I love my garlic press, and I'm using it today because we're making this great Italian dish, and you're making this possible for me. And I think that's something that it doesn't have to be immediate. We do want to thank them immediately, but really when you can bring that out into the future sometimes via text, via email, whatever it is, that really has almost as much or more meaning probably for that person that hey, they remember that I gave them this gift. And especially if it's something that the giver might be like, I don't know if they like it or not, or how excited they were to get it. If you just reapply that later on in the year, I mean, that's going to make that person go, wow, they really appreciated that, and they really enjoyed it, and they loved it. And I mean, that makes them feel good because you're using or letting them know how much you appreciate it.
I have a dear friend that is so very good about that. And it makes me feel just beyond pumped up about the gifts, small things, small little Cersei's that I give to her. But she'll text me and say, hey, you gave me the most awesome snack mix. It could be something very trivial. I mean, trivial. And I'm enjoying it as a treat at work today. And this just saved my afternoon and got me, geared up for my next meeting. She will send me texts like that all of the time. And I can't tell you how much that's appreciated. And likewise, when we pull out our holiday decorations, there are certain things that have been given to us from certain cotillion families and other loved ones. We're playing certain music. I like to reach back and say, hey, we're enjoying that holiday music that you gave. We are listening to that DVD with a wonderful sermon again that our relative, prepared and delivered. And so I just think it's so important to continue to reach back.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you both say, and I love this concept, is that, receiving a gift can be an opportunity to connect and strengthen the relationship beyond the day that you actually get the gift. And so keeping that perspective in mind, especially as we all continue to potentially face the pandemic for much longer and try to find new ways to connect after the holidays, the gifts we receive now can be opportunities to connect down the line. And that's a great way to think about it as well.
Indeed.
So we are getting to the end of our program, and so we did want to answer some questions that have come in, and we want to encourage anybody with us live to go ahead and ask any questions through our Facebook comments or through our chat room on Zoom. But we did have one come in around sort of this idea of those who are co-parenting and gift giving. How can co-parents kind of navigate some conversations around gifting children, especially when they disagree on what to give or how much to spend, and especially in situations where maybe the one co-parent could be using gifting as a way to either gain favoritism or impact the relationship. So there's a lot there. How can co-parents really navigate these muddy waters?
Well, coming from a co-parenting family myself, I mean, this is watching the parents kind of go through this. I mean, it was a while ago, but even today, I mean, there still can be some contention there. I mean, again, you want to come to a place where you feel like you're being heard, and you want the other person to listen, and you need to compromise. I mean, that's the biggest thing I feel. You're not going to go into a conversation and say, we're going to do this. This is A, B, C, and D. And the other person's probably going to be like, no, we're not doing that. We're going to do E, F, G. You've got to come for me, is some form of compromise, and just don't go in and, with guns blazing, so to speak, and just being like, this is the way it's got to be, or the highway. And just remember the kids involved. I mean, your kids, no matter if they're 5, 15, 25, they know what's going on. They can figure it out for the most part. I mean, even my parents divorced when I was 5. I mean, you could see that, hey, one parent, might be struggling, the other parent might not be, and you see that, hey, you get a little bit more from this person, but you might not get as much from this person. So it's tough. I mean, as the co-parents, you really need to think about the kids. I mean, it's about the kids. It's not about you. It's not about how you can make their lives easier. It's not about showing up the other parent, which I think a lot of times it can be. And you know, I think it's just an understanding as a co-parent of saying, you know, maybe one or the other, like I said, can't do everything. And if you're like saying, well, I know that the kids want this, you know, I want to get them this because they really want it. And as long as you're not trying to, again, use that as a tool to like get the kids to like one parent or the other better, which I know, like you said, it can be done sometimes like that. But just try to be open and honest. And yeah, it's going to create some contention, and that's fine. I mean, and they might not listen. I mean, my dad didn't really listen all that well, you know. But you just make sure you're thinking about the kids and have that conversation with the kids. I mean, that's the thing. The kids are going to know, and the kids are smarter than what we think they are. At least I feel like that. It's, you know, listening to some of our cotillion kids and stuff, and just know that everything that you might want might not get said or done the way you want it to be, but just know that it's about the kids, and if the kids are enjoying it, let the kids enjoy it. Don't feel like you have to say something negative about it. But it's a tough situation, and there's never going to be a right way to answer that question, because everybody's different, and everybody's going to feel like they did something and because the kids want it and the kids ask for it, and so they just feel like they have to do it sometimes. So it's a tough question.
Yeah, I would just love to keep the word respect, you know, as you collaborate as co-parents. I just think that respecting each other, respecting it's an art to me, you know, the institution of co-parenting, and really just appreciating that journey, appreciating each other, acknowledging that there's that, you know, that point of connection. So how do we shape this together collaboratively in the name of respect? Easier said than done, certainly.
Yeah. Some great advice around not only gift giving when you're co-parenting, but just co-parenting in general. You know, that self-reflecting and putting the kids at the center of all discussions, compromising, and also recognizing that you can't walk into a conversation making a ton of demands and expect that to be a fruitful conversation. And then, of course, modeling the behaviors and the reactions that we wish to see in our own kids, and trying to set boundaries around what we have control over. So really good advice, not only in the context of this program, but I think for co-parenting in general. And with that, so I did want to ask, you know, each of you to share a takeaway point, and Dr. Murray, you as well. What are some of the most important points that you want people to remember from today?
For me, it would be about just really going back to and understanding all the promise and opportunity around gift giving. It's about, you know, creating another memory. It's about appreciating others. It can be symbolic. It can strengthen relationships. It shouldn't be a chore. Gift giving should come from the heart. We should feel really good about giving the gifts, and you know, coming from a well-intentioned place and space. And this year, for me, it would be about focusing more on meaning, less about money, focusing more on care and consideration and creativity, and less about cost. And just really making some fine memories as we sunset 2020.
Yeah, I'd echo that too. And it's a tough year for everybody, but don't let the negativity of the year affect how you give or receive. Just be who you are, be happy, be as positive as you can be. And, you know, this year, you know, you might not be giving 100 gifts like you have been in the last 10 years, but maybe you are. But just make sure that, like Julie was saying, make sure that it's creative, make sure it has meaning. And if people know that it came from the heart, they're going to appreciate it no matter what they get.
I think those are really great takeaway points. During one of the discussions here, I had one of my favorite quotes about relationships and boundaries that came to my mind. And it's sort of one that I never would have thought would come up in the context of gift giving, but it's that you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep somebody else warm. And, you know, I just think about that within this year. Like, you don't have to spend more money than you can afford. You don't have to begrudgingly give gifts. But it got me thinking, probably if I had a few more days to think through this, I would have a more eloquent way to say it. But gift giving should be something that brings warmth into relationships. And I think it connects back to something I think you said earlier, Julie. It's like, we get a lot from the giving process too. And so let's think about, you know, giving this year is something where we can feel warmth ourselves, and how can we make this special for other people, and then sharing that warmth and that connection. And it might look different this year, but it still can be very meaningful with so many of the great ideas that you both have shared today. So how about you, Camilla? Any final thoughts, and you want to close us out?
Sure. Well, I think these are all great takeaway points. And I guess mine would be that, you know, when in doubt, have a conversation. You know, I think sometimes we get really caught up in the confusion in our own brains. And if we just talk with someone else and hash out these ideas and be transparent about our concerns, then we can really mitigate a lot of our own stressors and our own concerns about the holidays. And so when in doubt, pick up the phone and have a transparent conversation about where you are, and ask the other person to meet you halfway. And so I think that's probably good advice for just a pandemic year in general, I would say. But as we close up today, I do want to thank Julie and Brooks for your insights today. We're so glad to have had you here on our program, and so many great insights around not only giving gifts and receiving, but also just the relationship implications around this as well. So we're really grateful for your time and your expertise today, as well as, of course, Dr. Murray, HRI Director. Thank you for sharing your expertise today. I kind of threw you in as a panelist last minute, but I appreciate you sharing your feedback today. And then for those of you who are connecting with us live, we would really welcome the opportunity to hear how we've done today. And so we're going to go ahead and share a feedback form both in the Zoom chat room as well as on Facebook. And we'd love to just hear your thoughts on today's program. We will share the edited version of this recording on all of our channels, so you can stay connected with us on Facebook and Instagram at Healthy Relationships Initiative, as well as on YouTube and on Twitter, and then as well as our website. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and send that feedback form right now in the chat room. And I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday season, and that the insights you've kind of gained today help make gift giving and receiving a little bit easier and a little bit less stressful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye everyone.
Bye.